maybe consolidate your space.
Oh, yeah.
It'd be easier for me.
Yeah.
Well, being as it's just, so we've just got, this is, I'll do the introduction, so.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is Karen. Karen is a parishioner, but Karen is also a retired Episcopal priest. And is generous enough to share her time and wisdom with us and teach one of these classes every time we do the series. And so Karen will be speaking with us today regarding Episcopal worship and spirituality.
Sacraments.
Oh, sacraments, sorry. I got that on here, spirituality, sorry. No. Stand corrected. Before I hand it over to Karen, just do some introductions and a couple of things for next week. So first of all, this is Heather. Heather is pretty new here, just started coming in the last couple of months, I think.
My fifth time.
Fifth
I
time.
started the first day of basics.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
You know, Kat is a member of staff. This is Pauline. This is Jared's mama. So Pauline's actually been coming a while, but is interested in learning more. You know, Bob is our vestry liaison for access and connection. And then Matthew's been with St. John's a long time, 10 years, I think. And but Matthew is interested in learning more. So Matthew's been joining us, which is
Have
great.
you come before though, Matthew? It seems like you were. Okay, that's
Great.
the last time I was track of.
Now, before we jump in, I always every week want to bring you guys something. And so I'm actually going to be your speaker next week. So you get to hear from me for the full hour. Sorry about that. And I'm going to be talking to you about membership and lots of stuff about St. John's and kind of a lot of practical things. But to get you ready for that, I brought a couple of things this week. First of all, this is our spiritual gift assessment guide that we suggest that people take a look at. Because in order to find where you might fit in, it's good to kind of get an idea of who you are and what your gifts are, and then help connect them with, because we have a lot of opportunities here. We add them all up. We have something like 40 ministries. So there's a lot. So before we can help connect you with the right thing for you, it's good for you to do a little discernment about what your calling might be. And these are some tools in here to help you do that. There's one on the back, which is a very simple one, or the more in-depth one, asks you lots of questions. And if you're not the kind of person that wants to go through and tabulate lots of questions, that's fine. But I do suggest just reading some of the questions and just having a think about them. They might spur some thinking, some discernment about.
I'll take a look.
Yes, absolutely. And then what you'll find in here is what we've tried to do is give you, because some of this terminology is, you know, it says like, oh, you might have a calling to exhortation. Okay, what does that mean? You know, so what does that mean? So we've tried to give some descriptions, and then we've given some suggested ministries at St. John's that converts to. So exhortation, the gift of offering faithful encouragement, counsel, and empowering words. We've given some biblical references of where you can see that, and then suggested ministries at St. John's: house group leader, pastoral care team, a confirmation mentor. So we've tried to take what sound like big words in and help you turn that into where that practically might be a calling for you. Okay, so there's some tools in there, and then there's also a list of the many ministries and people to reach out to. But if you're not comfortable reaching out to people, that's okay. That's what we're here for. We can help you connect with the right people. Okay, so we'll talk more about that next week, but it would be good for you to do a little discernment in between now and next week. And then the other thing I wanted to suggest that you take a look at before next week. Here we go. This is our ministry fair, which we just had a while ago. This is the virtual version of that. There's lots of videos from many of our ministries, if you want to watch any of those, and then there's a button underneath each one if you want to reach out yourself to anybody that you're interested in connecting with. Again, you don't have to, we can help connect you. There's additional resources, and like I say, we've got tons of ministries, so that's only a few of the featured ones. You can find out more here. And then there's the online version of the spiritual gifts I've just given you, if you prefer online. Then the other thing we're going to be talking about is membership, and what we have is a database called My St. John's. And even if you're not sure yet, if you want to be an official member, we would love it if you think you're going to be hanging around for a while, for a season, for you to get registered in My St. John's. It is where you will be able to find contact information for anybody. You'll be able to get a parishioner directory. People will be able to get your contact information. It will be in one central place as well, so you won't have to give every person that you come in contact at St. John's your information. You can just say, I'm in My St. John's, and they can get there and get your information. Also, if you change information, you can just update it in one place and tell people, my new information's in My St. John's. You will also be able to get any giving records if you're interested in doing sacraments, which is what Karen's interested. All your sacramental records will be in there. Your end of year tax statements will be in there. Everything will be in one place, and you'll be able to go get it. So go to members. My St. John's is how you get there. Underneath, you can click for instructions, but also I can help you with that. But if you go to My St. John's, under here, see new user, click new user. It will think about it for a while. And actually, Pauline, you've already done yours, I know.
I've tried, yeah.
You are.
I'll try again. I know.
You're in.
I know I'm in, but
Yeah.
who knows if I can do
For
it again.
For Heather, you'll just do
I know.
St. John's without a period, and you'll get St. John Evangelist Episcopal Church, St. Paul. There are other St. John's, so make sure you get the right one.
Right.
Select that and then fill the rest of the form in. Submit registration. I'll get a notification because we want to make sure that you really are.
That I was successful.
Well, we don't want to
Oh.
let anybody in that we don't actually know that you really are somebody we know.
Oh, okay.
Because you're going to be able to get into the directory and contact other members, so
Right.
we want to keep it a closed community, not let any marketeers get in and take people's contact information and stuff. So I'll get a notification, I'll say, yep, I know Heather, and I'll approve it, and then you'll get log on information. So if you want to do that, that would be really good, then we'll get you on mailing lists, and you'll be able to, you can select if you want to be on mailing lists or not, things like
Right.
that.
Okay.
And you'll get whatever you want, and we'll be able to contact you, and you'll be able to contact anybody else.
I'm gonna do that this week.
Okay, so let's move. Yep, we will. Sorry. Just wanted to do that. Now over to you.
Okay. Thank you. Episcopalians are book people. From Bibles to prayer books to hymnals, we like words we can hold on to. And we also like symbols that help us make the invisible visible. It can be a tricky balancing act to find our own words and not to be so invested in things that we worship them instead of what they are meant to represent. So today we'll talk about why these books are so important to us and how we express our faith through worship. Those who are identified as Episcopalians or Anglicans have been using a prayer book for almost, any guesses on number of centuries? 500 years.
Oh, wow.
It began in England in the 1500s, influenced by Martin Luther's Reformation in England, and of course, Henry VIII's separation from the Roman Catholic Church and the Pope. Up until that time, Christian worship was in Latin, and the people were often a little more than observers. The great cathedrals had no pews. If you have ever been to a great cathedral in Europe. Okay, so on the wall, there will be a little bench about so big, and that would be for the infirm people who couldn't stand. Otherwise, people were standing in the middle, and they might have their flocks with them as well. They were just basically observers of what was going on up at the high altar. They, cathedrals also had sloped floors that allowed them to be cleaned more easily with some water sloshing, and you could kind of push that out the door then and not smell up the place. But the reformers, when they came along, were no longer satisfied with this passive observation or with the rulings from the church, where bishops strutted around in their lovely rich robes and ignored the sufferings of the people. Books were being printed, so more people could read, and people wanted to hear and read their own language in church, or as we say, in the vernacular. Lest we take the books in our pew racks for granted, know that these beautiful words of our faith did not come into our hands easily or painlessly. Archbishop Thomas Cranmer, who wrote and planned much of the Book of Common Prayer, was burned at the stake by Queen Mary, also known as
Bloody Mary.
Bloody Mary,
Oh, really? The dream.
for straying from the Catholic Church. Many others lost their lives before the first Book of Common Prayer was finally published for general use in 1549.
Wow.
And Wikipedia has a really good article about the development of the Book of Common Prayer. And so thinking about our prayer book and also to some extent hymns, I was thinking today, the cost of hymns are still often very dear. So this is Lift Every Voice and Sing, which is our African-American hymnal. And so we have in here all of these wonderful African-American slave songs and work songs that have been passed down as a way to encourage each other and to hold on to their faith. So I love this book. I have been an interim in several congregations, and at each one, I would throw in some kitty money, maybe $100, 150. And that was seed money. And then I would invite the congregation to pitch in. They were $15 at the time when I was doing this. So, you know, almost anybody could do that. And then had people write out the book plate they wanted to be in the book. And then we would have a dedication Sunday, and I would get a good sight reading musician who could come, and the people would we go around and say who each of the books was given for in memory of or in honor of, and then have a hymn sing, and it was just delightful. I miss that at St. John's. We're a little more in the traditional thing. And I don't choose the music here, so.
It's interesting how music is so important to certain people, because I've been with different groups of people. I was just with a group last week, and one of the ladies kept saying, I just get so tired that they don't sing the songs I want to sing.
Yeah, yeah, and it helps to speak to the organist, but
Yeah,
you get a choice of 3 or 4, maybe on a Sunday, and so we have over 600 in our books.
Right.
And they don't all apply to each season. Now today I thought it was wonderful, and that second to last one was lovely. I've never heard of that before. And the words were so beautiful about God looking over all of us and the creator of all. So I could go on and on about that, but I'll try to move ahead. A few years ago in London, I was able to see the first published translation into English of the New Testament. It was written by or translated by William Tyndale. And it is one of only 3 remaining copies. The rest were destroyed because they were thought to be very, very dangerous. And he also was executed for his work in this. In our own time, we are seeing the fear generated by books that threaten people who don't want knowledge for all the people. So I went to this wonderful exhibit in St. Paul's Cathedral. They are the ones that have Tyndall's book kept under lock and key in a hidden place. And it looks giant here. The actual size is about this size.
Oh, wow.
So that's not have a, yeah. So the importance of printing, we just can't describe that enough. And then the spelling hadn't quite been regularized at that point either. So books are a very big deal. And that was true when our church decided it was time to update the Book of Common Prayer, or as we also call it, the BCP. The Book of Common Prayer that I and many of us silver-haired parishioners grew up with, it come out in, anybody know the date? I bet Matthew does. Sarah? 1928. And in fact, it wasn't all that different from 1549. Except that we did not profess royalty to the British monarchs. And so in the 1970s, Episcopalians were introduced to several new trial prayer books that embodied radical changes in theology and practice, although was actually a return to the earliest worship in the church. Baptism, they finally decided or returned to, bestowed full membership, not confirmation. I was confirmed at age 12, and until that time, I could not take communion. And so that meant that small children could come up, and I can't tell you the number of parents or just other interested people who would come up and say, well, they don't understand it. They don't understand what this is all about. Well, I see children coming up to the altar, putting their hands out, and if I would go by, what would that say to a child? You're not wanted, we're ignoring you, you don't count. So, a few times the children came up to the rail and they stuck their hands out, and I put the wafer, the bread in their hands, and the parents, and it was as easy as that. The next week, there they were, ready to go again. Another change was Eucharist being the primary service on all Sundays and not morning prayer. I grew up down the street, St. Clements, first and third Sundays, we would have communion. The rest of the time was the morning prayer service. I sang in a junior choir, I loved that. But I didn't go to communion until I was 12. So this required the presence of what? Who?
Priest?
A priest. If you're going to have communion every Sunday, you've got to have the person up there, which means paying more in a salary, probably. You couldn't go for a few weeks and just have a little nice morning prayer service. So that changed things significantly. And furthermore, male language and the ordination rite was then to apply to women as well. So this change took place in 1976, right here in Minneapolis at our general convention. And I was attending there. I started seminary in 1975, the year before women's ordination was a sure thing. And so I and several of my friends were here. We stayed with my mom, and just to appreciate the joyfulness of that, oh, okay, we can keep on with our seminary. It was quite life-changing, wonderful.
So who can give the communion?
Priest or bishop,
Only,
and deacons also
and deacons,
must be ordained.
an ordained person can give communion.
An
What
ordinary,
changed What changed in 1975?
Oh,
I'm sorry. I missed
that women could be priests.
Okay,
That was the big thing, and go ahead.
who, you mentioned that only the priests could get communion,
Priests, deacons, and bishops,
Okay.
or ordained. people.
okay, that's what I was,
Oh, that's right, because during the times of morning prayer, you would have a lay reader who was the officiant.
Yeah.
And so could do the service as we still do here as well on
okay,
other occasions, yeah.
all right,
So
thanks.
anybody can lead morning prayer. You
Right.
don't need to be ordained or like
Right, or
every morning we
Compline, or-
do,
yeah.
we do morning prayer
Right, I
and
see.
that's led by lay people. You don't have to have a priest of that, but
And
when-
before it had to be,
no,
Oh,
it's
no.
always been okay, but when they said that the main service has to be a Eucharist on Sunday. Now you have to have an ordained person do that.
oh, okay,
So in order to do Eucharist, which is the same as communion, then you have to have an ordained person do that.
I got it.
Okay.
Got it?
Yeah, yeah. And these changes caused congregations to split apart. On the womanist female issue, on the having to pay more money for clergy. Having to buy new prayer books when that old one served all very well for all these years. They were falling apart in the pews, but by God, that was our prayer book. And so I was kind of in the midst of some of that stuff when I was first ordained, and you know, the words from the book of Revelation, behold, I make all things new, were not attributed to God trying to lead us on to something new. It was like those upstart people, the rabble rousers were bringing in new things. There were heated fights over whether to use wafers or leavened bread.
Oh, I remember that, Kara.
Oh.
The forward movement put out a lovely cookbook for making bread. So some recipes were for making a small like hockey puck size, quite dry and very stable. You had to really break those apart. And I will say that clergy sometimes refer to the wafers that we are now serving as fish food wafers. I mean, which is a biblical thing as well. You know, Jesus was breaking bread, giving fish there on the shore of Galilee. So that may work out too. And many of us, women priests, were confronted and accused for not knowing our place, which was not to be at the altar. Whether we like it or not, change happens. We may not like everything about the church, but we choose to come together because we hold values and beliefs in common with others. So it is fitting that we have a book of common prayer, common because it's shared by everyone, and also common because it uses the language of the people. And in how many of you are familiar with Rite One, then the Book of Common Prayer?
I'm sorry, but
Rite One, which is with some adaptations, the same language as the 1928 prayer book. So this is using these and thous. And then Rite Two, which is the one that we use, and there are 4 different service formats that we can use. But then now we also have a bunch of other expanded liturgies where Jesus is referred to as the mother who gathers her chicks under her wing. And
Yeah, Jared talked about this briefly, how Rite One is the very old language and it's quite paternalistic, you know, it's very male. And Rite Two became a little more modernized, but still tends to be male heavy. But there is now, as Karen said, there's now even more modern languages
Supplemental
and
liturgies, yeah.
yeah, and that they are now even become more female language, you
Right.
know, and that Jared was saying that they're now working on possibly a new revision of the Common Book of Prayer that will incorporate some of this even more modern language.
But the thing is, when we have access to these supplements now, and we have a whole different media things, so that not everything is published in books now, as much as we love them. And so when you think of the expense of that, it adds up. I want to read one of the changes that has come about is updates in other parts of the Anglican Communion. And one of that is in New Zealand. And so in their prayer book, they have Maori on one side and English on the other, all through the book. And I want to read you, where is it? This is one of their versions of the Lord's Prayer. Eternal Spirit, Earth Maker, Pain Bearer, Life Giver, Source of all that is and that shall be. Father and Mother of us all, loving God, in whom is heaven. The hallowing of your name echoed through the universe. The way of your justice be followed by the peoples of the world. Your heavenly will be done by all created beings. Your commonwealth of peace and freedom sustain our hope and come on earth. With the bread we need for today, feed us. In the hurts we absorb from one another, forgive us. In times of temptation and test, strengthen us. From the trials too great to endure, spare us. From a grip that all that is evil, free us. For you reign in the glory of the power that is love, now and forever. Amen. So I don't think we're quite ready to say that on a Sunday here at St. John's, but they do in New Zealand. And this is a book of common prayer, just like ours is. It has the lectionary in the back, and it's got the collects and the prayers and stuff. So you can come up and look at that if you'd like to. There's also some really lovely prayers in there that I enjoy. There's one about at the close of day, and just allows you to take a sigh and, Lord, it is night, the night is gone, or the day is gone. Okay, so also in our pews are hymnals. And so the date on this is 1982. Well, that's actually the date that it was approved by the General Convention. And so it was in process for quite a few years before that. I was on the liturgical commission in the diocese here as we were going through this, and there were big committees, and I have so they made some progress in taking out all of the male language in here, not much. And then just a little while later, the New Century Hymnal for the UCC Church came out and took the same hymns and just made these wonderful adaptations to make the language inclusive. And we were just a little too early to do that. And again, I mean, you've got this substantial 5-pound book here. You don't just go out and reprint the thing. And then we also, okay, let me see. So there is that saying, those who sing pray twice. And I know during the COVID thing here, when we were not allowed to sing, it was just breaking my heart every Sunday and wearing the masks. And now it's, and oh gosh, today it was just wonderful again, our last hymn, and then Richard's postlude, and then that lovely hymn in between that I had never heard before. What number was that?
Was it 409?
409, I think. Oh, I'm going to go back and read the poetry for that. And so again, behold, I make all things new. I want you to look at hymn 139. Let me see why I chose that here. Okay, look in your hymnal there. Here.
What number?
139. And so this hymnal is just a fabulous source of poetry and history.
Last Sunday, I took a picture of one of the hymns and sent it to my friend that's married to a native in Alaska.
Oh.
And she just said, "Oh, you're awesome to think of us," because it was about including culture. You know,
Yeah.
I don't remember the song right now. But it just touched me and I thought of them right away
Yeah.
because they're very close friends and he's gone through so much. And they were very touched.
Oh, and just,
But I just had to use my phone and take a picture during the song.
yeah. Oh, that's
The
wonderful.
songs are wonderful.
So look on the bottom of this page. Who was the author?
Martin Luther.
Martin Luther.
Oh,
And then, so also
Mr.
The,
Harry.
the music was written by, what's his name there?
F. Lamb Tucker, or no, who's the, oh, the music
Oh.
by, Jordan
Yeah.
Kahn.
Yeah,
No,
so the paraphrase is by Bland Tucker
yeah.
in 1895 to 1984. Okay, look now at 140. What have we got there?
Oh, John Donne.
John Donne.
Sonnet.
So this again is back hundreds of years. And the John Donne poetry is just, you know, hits
Yes.
your heart. So simple and so profound. Then go to 146. What have we got there?
Gregory the Great.
Gregory the Great. 540
Mhm.
that was written. And then the music is from the 12th century.
Mm.
See, then 403, let's look there. And those, we have those hymns from the 500s because they were so important for people's worship and spirituality that they were passed down. Okay, here we have George Herbert. And then look who the musician is for 403.
Calvin Hampton.
Calvin Hampton, who is a jazz musician. And there's another one that I really love. I asked Richard if he will use, I can't remember the name of it right now, but and then I also want you to, let's take a look down here. On the bottom of the page, you will see all those numbers. 10, 10, 10, 10, 10 on the next page, 66,
Oh, yeah.
66 with refrain. That refers to a system of interchangeable tunes.
Oh.
So,
No.
and the,
So this could be sung to other
yes,
melodies.
well, for instance, O Little Town of Bethlehem, you know that. So, sing it.
Oh.
But now we're warmed up and singing.
This is to a little town.
Then in the back, on page 954. There's the index of first lines. So if you wonder, oh, what's the rest of the words for that? If you can remember the first line, you can find it. Then going back on 949, index of tune names.
Oh.
So that is where you can do some of those substitutions. And, this is not the one with the. This is just a direct name of it that you could plug in. It's not the one with the numbers 10, 10, 10, 10, which you would also be able to switch. And then we have the index of composers, arrangers, and sources. Page 943. And then composers and arrangers. And then authors, translators, and sources.
Oh, boy.
Copyrights. Copyright acknowledgements. And so the copyright, I mean, that's really important for,
Yeah.
for a while. As some of these new things were coming out, some of us were going through Curcio and we just wanted to make our own little few hymnals. And now I think the copyright laws have broadened enough and people buy a permission that would cover almost everything. And then some things are in free domain, so that's not a problem. So I invite you to look at some of that. I've got. Okay, so in addition to this wonderful book, there is
Oh, dear.
Lift Every Voice and Sing. And
I think so. Let's do a Dolly Parton Sunday or
oh,
Taylor Swift.
We might crash the internet if we do it first.
Oh, let's do Dolly
Yeah.
Parton.
Have you seen it's harder to get Taylor Swift concert tickets than it is to get into Harvard?
That's funny.
I hear she feels badly. I hear they feel badly.
Yeah.
Or Willie Nelson Sunday
yeah, yeah.
That would be fun.
without.
So
herbs.
does St. John's ever think
We do have inserts sometimes, yeah. Yeah, not as much as I would like, because, so my seminary was two American Baptist seminaries and then the Episcopal. Colgate, Rochester, Bexley Hall, Crozier in Rochester, New York. So I started seminary in 1975. And Colgate, Rochester had been an American Baptist, not to be confused with Southern Baptist. Had been very active with justice issues, and then Bexley Hall came, it had been in Kenyon, Ohio, and moved to be part of this consortium. And then Crozier Seminary came, and Crozier had been in Chester, Pennsylvania, and that is where Martin Luther King Jr. attended. I had his ethics professor in 1975.
So were you living in Rochester at that
I
time?
moved there to go to seminary. I'm from St. Paul, and I moved there to go to seminary. So 3 years in Rochester. So we had the opportunities during the week. We had a what we would call the free church, Methodist, Presbyterian, UCC. Those services had, or those denominations had a service. We had 3 a week. We had an Episcopal service, communion. Several of our faculty were ordained priests, and then we had the Black church service. And so for me, it was the first time I had heard the preaching that went with that. And we had the little Hammond organ there. And I tell you, if I was feeling down, I would go to that Black church service, because I would be walking tall at the end of it. It was so uplifting and renewing. And because this was a Baptist school originally, there were no kneeling benches or anything. And so we just didn't, they had some kind of foam thing. My knees were already giving me trouble at that time. So I learned that I could sit and pray as effectively, if not more so, than being on my knees. And it was a wonderful, life-changing experience for me. I'm so glad I was able to be there and be part of that. And then, so going on, a few more books. This is Holy women, holy men, celebrating the saints. Our understanding of saints has just blossomed. You know, we can name the, hi there, welcome.
Hi, Katie. Hi.
We're talking about books. And so saints have just been, we've got the oldest ones, here's Martin Luther King Jr. And we have a Minnesota saint, En Magabo, who was a famous native priest. And he did work up north with native peoples and missionary work. Here's Oscar Romero and the Martyrs of El Salvador. Gregory the Illuminator died in 332. Cyril of Alexandria, 386. So the old guys are in here, but also the new guys. Here's Fanny Crosby. What did she do? Who, though blind from infancy, beheld the glory with great clarity of vision and spent her life giving voice to people's heartfelt praise. So in 1915, she died. So anyway, it's this is in the office, I imagine, or you could ask.
What's it called again?
Holy Women, Holy Men, and it's published by the Church Pension Fund.
So why is it that we do saints days and saint?
To recognize that they have made contributions with their lives and that they still have impact on us. Now, in the Catholic Church, there's much more emphasis put on that. I think kids are named, they have a saint that they take the name of. But it's part of our history.
My sister asked me that and I didn't, because she knows I'm going through this
Yeah.
formation class and I don't know how to answer her. Well, I mean, everyone talks about Saint Teresa. I mean,
Right,
so.
yeah, who was a saintly woman, and I don't know if you know, but in her journals, she wrote about the depth of her doubt during all the time that she was starting these missionaries and, you know, kneeling on her knees for hours at a time.
My brother got to meet her and be with her.
Oh my gosh.
I have a picture of him and her together, talking together.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
special,
yeah.
very special history.
And so she kept that doubt, and yet she kept on doing the work
She did.
she felt God called her to do. Yeah, which is really what we can do. I mean, it can be the smallest thing. The greeting the stranger is still just the most basic thing of our faith.
It is.
Now, you came as a stranger, right, a few weeks ago?
Yes.
How were you greeted?
Very, yes, I feel like I was welcomed and reached out to right away.
Okay, now you're finding your roots a little bit, as we could say in Minnesota. Yeah, wonderful. For me, church coffee hour is absolutely the worst time of the week. If I'm in charge of it and I can do my hospitality thing, my bachelor's is home ec education, so I like the doing of that. But otherwise I stand there looking, you know, pressed and clean, and people are walking around talking to people in their own group, people they know. And I try to remind myself to go up and talk to.
Karen, you and I should talk together in a corner then.
Okay,
I feel the same way sometimes. I'm happy to put it out there and, yeah.
right, and I am an introvert, I can act very well as an extrovert, I can take some liberties and dance down the middle of the aisle, leading church. And really being, I guess, a fool for Christ, but put me in a coffee hour and And, you know, who will talk to me? Who will notice I'm here? Who will care? So, you know, that's one of the most basic things we can do in our faith life is just to say hello. And you don't, of course, you're not going to know everybody. You can go up if you wear a name tag. Hi, I'm Karen. Your name?
Heather.
Heather. Oh, nice to meet you, Heather. How many times have you come to? Are you just new here at St. John's?
Yeah,
Oh,
5 times.
great.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
Yes.
Be for them, I think.
So,
Very much so.
and doing coffee hour is a good way to become more acquainted, and so I'll step down off that. So, yeah, so.
Karen, can you remind me what seminary you went to? Was it Northeastern Seminary?
It was Colgate, Rochester, Bexley Hall, Crozier, Rochester, New York. So now Bexley moved to Columbus, Ohio for a while to share in a Lutheran campus. The thing is, seminary buildings are hugely expensive to keep up because my class, I had 60 people in my class in seminary, and there were 5 of us Episcopalians, the rest were all these other denominations, but that's not a lot of tuition that you're getting in to uphold the building. So in Columbus, Bexley Hall had a house and then co-taught with some of the Lutheran faculty and used their facilities. And now they have come to Chicago. So it's Bexley Seabury, and they're using, I think, Northwestern buildings. So it keeps changing. On the one hand, I think, oh, I really want to be able to, you know, go back to Rochester and find the places that were important to me. And I think, well, no, we're supposed to be, you know, maybe I need to make a trip to Chicago and meet people. And Nathan, one of our postulants for ordination, he's doing an online class at Bexley now. And so things change.
Well, you can't come to Rochester. My daughter's moving to Rochester, so I'll greet you. It'll be a good excuse for us both to go to Rochester.
I loved that campus. It was wonderful. It was really a very good place for me. And one of the things that was really important is that the other denominations had already been ordaining women. So I and my friend Maggie were not the only ones. So the Presbyterian Church went back, and Colgate Rochester had been ordaining missionary women since the late 1800s. And so there was that core and recognition that this was an okay thing to do.
Can I ask a question about women in the African American church? Are they in the same progress in the African American church, or is it more male?
Well, I mean, the
Episcopal or other
oh,
denominations?
yes, yeah, absolutely. They're the bishop of Indianapolis, where I used to be, is an African American woman. So that just moved right along. Now, as Jared was talking about this morning, is Dolores Williams. I met her at a church conference, and the issues are so much more complex and deep for African American women, and yet in many ways the same. So
But are they accepted as women in Africa as a pastor?
that I don't know. I've been part of a group called Women Touched by Grace. This was, I'll say a little bit more of that in a moment, but it was a program developed by the Benedictine sisters at a monastery in Beech Grove, Indiana, which is right on the edge of Indianapolis. And so they used an Eli Lilly grant to invite Protestant clergy women to come to the monastery And so I was one who was selected. There were 30 of us in this first cohort. We met 6 times at the monastery for 10 days. And then we had an all expenses paid trip to Italy, visiting Benedictine sites. And so that started in 2003. And now they're just finishing up the 4th group that is coming through. We're the only ones that were able to go to Italy. But so what I wanted to tell you, I have a friend in that group who is African American and Lutheran. And you think, well, Angie, you know, and she, when you talk to her, she is so Lutheran. You would have no doubts about that. She's not American Baptist or Presbyterian. She is truly Lutheran, and just the Spirit works in mysterious ways. So, and here's another miscellaneous book. This is the Book of Occasional Services, and in here, should you have need for it, you can find out how to do an exorcism.
Oh.
Actually, go to your bishop. So there's Stations of the Cross in here. Prayers for Maundy, Thursday, agape meal. Welcoming new people to the congregation, saying goodbye to people in the congregation, services of healing, founding of a church, groundbreaking, laying a cornerstone, restoring of things profaned. You know, well, like mosques that are spray painted and defiled, and sometimes our churches have that as well. So this is, we have a prayer for bringing that back into proper order and sacredness. Okay, I better move along here. Are we okay? It's, yeah,
Yeah, we usually go later than 12.
okay.
You got another 10-15 minutes.
Okay, so our worship books are resources or tools that help us express the faith. And so we hold that faith in our hearts, in our minds. And we also believe that God is revealed to us through the sacraments. Can anyone give me the definition of a sacrament that you would have learned at 12 years old in the confirmation class? A sacrament is an outward and visible sign of an inward and spiritual grace, and it's right in the back in the catechism in here. And God's grace is favor towards us, unearned and undeserved. By grace, God forgives our sins, enlightens our minds, stirs our hearts, and strengthens our wills. And that's found on page 858 in the BCP. There are 2 great sacraments. What are they?
Baptism.
Baptism and
Baptism, communion, and
yeah, communion and baptism. In baptism, so this is, we're going to have the outward and visible sign of the inward spiritual grace. In baptism, we are adopted as God's children and made members of the church, the body of Christ. The outward sign for baptism is what?
water.
Water. And also the holy oil, chrism. And the inward sign is union with Christ in his death and resurrection, forgiveness of sins, and new life in the Holy Spirit. Eucharist is the sacrament commanded by Christ for the continual remembrance of his life, death, and resurrection until he comes again. So outward sign,
Water.
and
Wine.
wine, bread and wine. Mhm. And the inward sign is uniting ourselves with Christ's body and blood and with others in our community. Now, we view this as consubstantiation, Christ's real presence in the bread and the wine blessed by the priest. Roman Catholics believe in transubstantiation. Ever heard that word? Okay, so they believe that the bread and wine become Christ's body and blood. We believe Christ's presence is that in there. We take it because we believe in that presence, uplifting us, healing us, energizing us. And for Catholics, it's the actual body and blood. So it's transmuted to be that. So that's why this disagreement is why Roman Catholics practice closed communion. But there are times when the door is open. So I'm telling you about this Women Touched by Grace program. The first time we met, 30 of us women, we were broken down into small groups, and in some subsequent gatherings, we were to lead worship service. The first time we hadn't known each other, and so the sisters, Benedictine sisters, had arranged for communion for our service. And so the person they invited was my bishop, Kate Wainick, at that time. So here we are in a Roman Catholic Benedictine monastery. My bishop, Kate Wainick, is at the altar in the Benedictine Roman Catholic monastery, blessing the bread and wine, touching the vessels of the Roman Catholic sisters there. And I had tears coming down my face. I was one of the chalice servers. And so Kate did communion and then came up, and those sisters marched up that aisle, put their hands out. Not a problem. You know, it just, and that has continued to be the case. When we are there, we are always welcome at the table. So there's let me share another little tiny bit here from Frederick Buechner. Any of you know Frederick Buechner, Kat? Okay, he's a wonderful author. He's got this book, Wishful Thinking, a Theological ABC. And then he also has one about saints that is wonderfully pithy. I would read about Holy Communion, but it's too long. This is wine. Unfermented grape juice is a bland and pleasant drink, especially on a warm afternoon, mixed half and half with ginger ale. It is a ghastly symbol of the lifeblood of Jesus Christ, especially when served in individual antiseptic thimble-sized glasses. Wine is booze, which means it is dangerous and drunk-making. It makes the timid brave and the reserved amorous. It loosens the tongue and breaks the ice, especially when served in a loving cup. It kills germs. As symbols go, it is rather a splendid one. And there's 5 additional sacraments that we use at various times, developed by the church under the guidance of the Holy Spirit, but not necessary for salvation. Confirmation is the mature commitment to Christ, and what's the outward sign?
All the laying of the hands.
Laying on hands, and the bishop does that. Reconciliation of a penitent, receiving absolution of sins and restoring one's relationship with God. And that would be like a 5-step in the 12-step programs, where you do your 5th step, you make a confession and receive absolution. So, and there the outward sign is assurance of pardon. Unction of the sick or anointing, receiving God's grace for spiritual and physical healing. So the outward sign, holy oil again. So there's there's oil of unction, which is given in this circumstance, and then there's chrism, which is the oil used at baptism. And then matrimony, entering into lifelong union and making vows before witnesses. So what are the outward signs?
The exchanging of the rings.
And the vows, saying out loud your intentions. And some clergy wrap their stole around their hands. I've never done that, but no, I went to an Anglo Baptist seminary, so some of these things weren't taught as much. We did enjoy hearing the stories from our pre-church students when they went to practice baptisms in the big vats in some of the Baptist churches, which we didn't do. And then in ordination, God gives authority and the grace of the Holy Spirit. So in ordination, what would be outward sign? Yes, laying on of hands, and for deacons, only the bishop does laying on of hands. For priest ordinations, all the other priests come forward. And there's one where it's visible every week. No, I haven't seen the back table. The stole.
Oh, right on the stove.
Yeah. Which comes from the early churches, a scarf to keep you warm in those cold churches. Really? So now it's transmuted onto much different things. So in addition to the sacraments, we have many other forms of worship and devotion. Daily offices come to us directly from the long monastic, especially Benedictine tradition. The Book of Common Prayer provides format for morning and evening prayer, noonday prayer, and compline. And the offices can be done by individuals as well as in communities. The lectionary, do you know about the lectionary? List of the lessons coming up. So that's in the book, the back of your Book of Common Prayer, and it lists, it has here's a table to find movable feasts and holy days. So let me see. Let's see. I can't find it here. Anyway, that's all in there, and all the lessons and stuff. Now, we have a new revised standard lectionary that has been adopted by most of the Protestant churches. So some of these are not relevant anymore. More women are included, more stories that have a better continuity with the church year. Can you name the seasons of the church?
No.
What's coming up?
Oh,
Advent.
Yes,
Yeah.
good. Okay, 10 points. Yeah, what's next?
Lent,
Christmas.
You have Christmas.
Oh,
yeah, then Christmas,
Christmas,
Epiphany.
Epiphany,
Then.
Lent, then
Easter.
Easter, then,
Pentecost.
yes, and finally, the long grain season, ordinary time,
ordinary time.
which could be quite extraordinary. And Episcopalians often, we are so dependent on these books, and if you ask someone to pray without a book, they get a little scared, and sometimes all you need to say is help or thank you. And just to open your mouth and, dear God, thank you for this day, for the sun being out again, for being able to offer some hospitality to someone who needed it, for our gathering today, for learning more about the church and ways to serve. Amen. Amen. Any questions?
Thank you
Comments?
for sharing your experiences and wisdom with us.
That's awesome. 42 years I've been ordained now. I don't know where that time is going. And I like being a pew sitter. I don't know, some of you may know that I usually knit during sermons now, but right now I'm making mittens for my cousin for Christmas, and I'm at a crucial point
Oh,
on
the
the
thumb.
so it's not as mindless as just sitting there going back and forth.
I love knitting mittens.
Yeah, these are thrummed mittens. You know what
Drummed? Oh, as in, let's see. Like
So the end,
lobster.
they're stuffed. So you take a little bit of unspun roving and roll that up. And then as you take a stitch, you wrap the roving around, and then you end up with, they look like boxing gloves. But then as your hands sweat a little bit, it compacts that and
Oh,
it felts it inside, so
Oh,
they're
interesting.
very airtight,
mhm.
very warm. And, you know, acrylic mittens just don't.
Karen also is a leader in our
Do you do prayer? shawl?
prayer shawl knitting group.
Oh, how
I need to
fun.
come to that so you can
Oh.
teach me how to knit.
Oh, I would love to do that, and I would be
Yeah.
very happy to do that.
Yeah, when do you meet? Do you meet
It's the second two Wednesdays.
second
That's
Wednesday
one
here?
here.
Okay.
And I love teaching knitting. I would be happy to do that at any time after church.
I can knit a mitten, but anything other than a mitten. I'm
Well,
available.
knitting, that's pretty good because you've got some shape in that. So if you
That-
want to
that's
talk to me, I'd be very, really, very happy to do that.
Oh, yeah, second
Um,
Wednesday.
come and look at these books if you want to. Um,